Hello, everyone. I'm Lana Zach. Thank you so much for joining me. A bipartisan group of senators says they have reached an agreement on a potential infrastructure deal. The lawmakers say that their plan would be fully paid for and would not include any tax increases. CBS News has learned it is expected to cost approximately $1.2 trillion, which is far less than the president's original proposal. It comes as President Biden made a major announcement on the global fight against COVID-19 during the first full day of his 8-day overseas trip. The president said the U.S. was purchasing 500 million doses of Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine, which will be donated to 100 countries over the next year. Mr. Biden said the U.S. had a, quote, humanitarian obligation to address global vaccine shortages and prevent new variants from spreading. Earlier in the day, the president met with UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The two leaders signed an updated version of the decades-old Atlantic Charter, which highlights the closer relationship between the two nations. Both men said they would work to address new challenges, including cybersecurity and climate change. But President Biden's trip is just getting started, with G7 and NATO summits, as well as a highly anticipated meeting with Vladimir Putin, all set to take place in the coming days. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes kicks off our coverage from the UK.
The president walked onto the world stage today and into a warm embrace.
Everybody's absolutely thrilled to see you.
President Biden once described the UK's Boris Johnson as a physical and emotional clone of President Trump. But all that was forgotten today as the two sought to mend the bonds between their countries and reassert a powerful partnership. The First Lady driving home the point with a jacket embroidered with one word: love.
It's wonderful to listen to the Biden administration and to Joe Biden, because there's so much that they want to do together with us, from security, NATO, to climate change. And it's fantastic. It's a breath of fresh air.
After their 90-minute meeting, Mr. Biden made his first remarks about the giant new purchase of Pfizer vaccines he plans to give to nearly 100 countries.
The United States is providing these 500,000 doses with no strings attached. We're doing this to save lives, to end this pandemic. That's it, period.
Jeff Zients spearheaded the $3.5 billion purchase.
It actually happened really quickly, across a few weeks.
Zients chairs the White House COVID task force.
But in a lot of these countries, is it even possible to get a vaccine right now?
I think in some countries it's very, very difficult, if not impossible.
Vaccine diplomacy abroad, a possible breakthrough at home. 5 Republican senators and 5 Democrats announced this evening they had reached an agreement on the outlines of an infrastructure package. This investment, they said, would be fully paid for and not include tax increases.
And Nancy Cordes joins me now from Cornwall, England. Hello, Nancy. I want to start with those new developments on infrastructure. As you reported, 10 senators announced an agreement on the outline of an infrastructure package. How has the White House been responding?
Well, the White House has not responded formally yet, but I'm told, Lana, that they aren't pleased with parts of this package. And in fact, they've already warned this bipartisan group that parts of the proposal violate the president's red line against raising taxes or fees on Americans making less than $400,000 a year. You've heard him say that time and again. So while the bipartisan group insists that their plan doesn't raise income taxes, the White House has clearly seen enough of what's in it to identify some transportation fees, some gas taxes and the like that could hit lower income Americans. So that, I'm told, is something that would have to be fixed in order to win White House approval. Now, that's not necessarily a deal breaker, though the White House plan is significantly larger than what this bipartisan group has come up with, about $1.2 trillion over the next 8 years. The president's last proposal was about $1.7 trillion. So still room for discussion, but this is the farthest that a bipartisan group has gotten when it comes to infrastructure in quite some time, Lana. And seeing as President Biden's talks with Republicans fell apart a few days ago, this may be the best option for some kind of quick agreement on an infrastructure package.
It sounds like 2 steps forward, but still 1 step back. So we'll have to continue monitoring that. But it is good to see some level, at least, of bipartisan progress. Nancy, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk about the president's announcement of those 500 million doses of Pfizer COVID vaccine, which will be donated to 100 low to middle income countries over the next year. How did this come together, and how does it play into the Biden administration's foreign policy goals?
Well, I spoke with Jeff Zients. He is the COVID task force chair for the White House, and he really spearheaded this purchase of 500 million doses from Pfizer, about $3.5 billion worth. The contracts are still being signed, but that's the proposal and the plan. And he said it actually came together fairly quickly. It only took a few weeks. You know, the White House has gotten pretty adept at crafting these large purchases at this point, and so are the big pharmaceutical companies. They have been working together consistently for more than a year now. First the Trump White House, then the Biden White House. And they've been insistent that this isn't so-called vaccine diplomacy, because that suggests, they say, that they want something in return from these nearly 100 countries that'll be receiving free vaccines. They insist they don't want anything in return. The president himself made that clear. What they want is more safety for Americans, and the only way Americans get that safety is if everyone around the world gets vaccinated so that the virus and its variants can be crushed. Now, I should point out that 500 million doses sounds like a lot, but remember, Pfizer is a 2-dose vaccine, so that's really 250 million people, and we're looking at a world population of 8 billion people. So in that regard, it's kind of a drop in the bucket, and it could take much more than a year to get anywhere close to the world's population vaccinated.
Yeah, but as you say, it is important not only for being a global citizen, but also for citizens here in the United States who are affected by those variants. So obviously, President Biden's going to start attending the G7 summit beginning on Friday. Tell us about the key issues that he's hoping to discuss there.
Well, the summit is going to focus on Friday largely on economic issues. So these world leaders are going to be discussing, for example, infrastructure, not back at home in the U.S., but in the developing world, and working on ways that they can help developing countries, lower income countries, develop safer infrastructure, better infrastructure, more energy efficient infrastructure, and the like. So that's going to be a big topic of conversation. And the president kind of foreshadowed here in his speech that there is going to be another big announcement from all of these world leaders when it comes to fighting coronavirus. He kind of had his moment in the sun on Thursday talking about the U.S. plan, but clearly there's more in the works among all of these leaders when it comes to donating more vaccines, donating more supplies to the rest of the world. And that was really one of the goals of this big U.S. announcement coming into the summit, was to raise the stakes for other major industrialized nations to start giving more, just as the U.S. has demonstrated that it's ready to do.
And on Monday, the president will attend a NATO summit. Can you tell us more about what's on that agenda?
Sure. So NATO will obviously be more focused on security issues, Afghanistan, for example, and the ongoing drawdown of troops there. Russian aggression and incursions into Crimea and Ukraine. That will be really the biggest focus of the NATO summit as they discuss how to handle a more aggressive Russian state in advance of President Biden's meeting with Putin later in the week. And with all of these meetings, really, Lana, President Biden is looking to send a message to Putin I've got the world on my side. I've got all of these European leaders. I've got the UK leader, other leaders who have been invited here from major countries around the world, looking to go into that meeting with Putin from a position of strength and to send a message that this is going to be a much different summit than the one we saw between President Trump and President Putin in Helsinki a few years ago.
Yeah, obviously the sequencing of all of these meetings and summits matter, since his meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin's supposed to take place on Wednesday. Anything more in terms of what we can expect the two leaders to discuss?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think cybersecurity is going to be first and foremost. President Biden has already said he is going to be addressing that issue with President Putin. We've seen just over the past few weeks a number of significant ransomware attacks on major U.S. companies, the Colonial Pipeline, meat supplier JBS, which we now know forked over millions of dollars to get their data back that had essentially been hijacked by these hackers who are living in Russia. So they're not necessarily part of the Russian government, but President Biden is going to argue that Putin could do more to crack down on these hackers and needs to. Beyond that, he's also going to discuss with him concerns about Russia and its incursions into Ukraine in particular. Just before President Biden left, his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that Mr. Biden was on the phone with the Ukrainian president from the Oval Office, expressing his support for President Zelensky and inviting him to the White House later this year, looking to send a message to President Putin that the U.S. is going to stand by Ukraine in this very sticky and long-standing conflict between Russia and the West.
Busy several days ahead of you, Nancy. Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.